What's going on, peeps? Waiting for old Compliance Edge to get on. Oh, there he is.
What's up, Dave? Eric, what's happening? What's up, dude?
What up, dude?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, can you see me? I'm cut off in my square, so.
You're kind of cut off, but it's all good, man.
Okay. Let's try it. Figure it out. I feel like I should use the stand because I have a stand and I like to show some knives and stuff like that. But cool. How you been?
What's been up, man?
Not much, dude. Just been working a lot, and that's it. Thankfully, the last couple months, my shop, it's all me, so I can just go there and not have to interact with people and not worry about,
Your social distancing.
Yeah, exactly. Doing my own thing and just working a lot, and that's pretty much it. And coming up with a lot of new designs and kind of new processes, trying to go for a little more like in-house production, get that route.
Yeah.
So it's been working out pretty well. And yeah, how about yourself?
So we're getting enough people on here now. I guess I'll give a little bit of history. So I did a review. I found old Yanni on here on social media. Liked his stuff. Ended up reaching out to him. Did a review for you for Recoil Online. That ended up getting you in a little bit of heat, but it's all good.
Yeah. All right. We can talk about that. It's all good.
But I haven't been given anything from him. We've been friends now since I did that, for 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago?
Yeah, that was probably like 4 or 5 years ago. And I mean, it has to be. I've been here for almost 3 years. So it's probably longer than that. And yeah, I remember telling you, I said, you can't have the knife strictly because I don't want you to give it a good review. Like, you're not getting to keep this. So don't go into it. That's what I tell everyone whenever they're going to do a review. I'm like, you don't get to keep this. So if you're going to go harsh on it. And yeah. So.
No, I ended up cutting down a couple saplings with it. Had it out there at the schoolhouse. Was all good. Had nothing but great things about your blades. Ended up visiting his shop a couple times. And just kindred spirits, I guess, in a lot of ways. And so I was trying to get some friends and people to get on here. Everybody's been bored and stuck inside, and get people with different backgrounds and different experience bases to, obviously we want to talk about your knives and stuff too, but talk about, stuff going on, talk about combatives. I know you have a background in that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to give a little background to yourself real quick, kind of some of your experiences and stuff, kind of who you are? Or
yeah, we can do a little bit of both. So,
sure.
So I, for those who are jumping on my page from Compliance Edge's page, did 14 years in the SEAL teams, medically retired a couple years ago. Ended up, when I did the review for him, I was running the sniper schoolhouse. Deployments overseas, all the good stuff. I think it's one of those things where, there's always somebody with more experience than you, and my experience is what it is. So I try not to beat it up too much. But yeah, so that's where I come from. And then obviously, where does your background come from?
So, I mean, I don't have any kind of military background, especially not SEAL teams, but I got into knives through Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It was just kind of like, it kind of goes hand in hand. A lot of the jiu-jitsu community likes the kind of gun and, knife community and all that. Like, it's kind of natural, right? It's a martial art. And, so I've just trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since I was about 14 years old. So I think 2004. So I've been in it like 14 years now. Probably for 10 years strong, probably took like 4 years off in between. Have a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Currently training with Dean Lister, Jocko Willink over here in San Diego at Victory. And the first 10 years of Jiu-Jitsu I did with Dave Camarillo. And I basically got into this through jiu-jitsu because one of the instructors at my old academy was like, hey man, do you want to make a knife? Like randomly one day. And I thought it, like, it was I had this weird thought in my head, like, cause I did metals in high school. So all my real like formal metal training, right, was in high school. Learned how to do like grinding, heat treating, like the basic principles of heat treating and stuff like that. And also safety. Like we spent half a semester in high school on doing just like how to work with equipment without like fucking yourself up, basically.
Yeah.
And that was like a really big thing going into it. Cause once I kind of picked up, like bought some tools and started making knives, I was like, oh, you know, at least I know how not to like cut off my fingers or get injured or whatever. And
I think that's key to life, I think, for a knife maker.
And so one day one of the instructors at Guerrilla Jiu-Jitsu, Matt Darcy, was like, hey man, do you want to make a knife? Like just like sent me a picture of a blank. He had already like started. And I was like, all right, sounds good. Yeah, I took metal shop. Like, let's go. And just a little back room in the academy. And we just started cutting stuff up with angle grinders and just buying cheap equipment. And then quickly moved into a duplex, had a little garage, and started making knives from there. And that was it. So my back.
When did you go full time?
Like a year after doing that. I kind of started right as I was graduating college. So it was like the perfect storm. Like I was just making a little bit of knives while I was still in school, not knowing really what I wanted to do afterwards. And then, you know, as soon as I got out of school, I had this little duplex, and I was just making enough knives that I could sell them. My buddy is a cop over in Fremont, and he kind of started with me. He helped me out for a little while, and he was just selling them to other cops that were his buddies and other military guys. You know, he was prior service as well. And that was just enough to kind of like pay the rent and keep the lights on, and just kept doing it and didn't stop. And it was just right timing. Like no kids, you know, not married, like young, nothing to lose. That's it. If I had done this with, you know, kids or something like that, trying to balance a full-time job, like it probably would have never happened. So it just kind of got in at the right time. Yeah, pretty much. So that was how I got into this. And that's kind of my background in terms of martial arts. And then Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu led to combatives training. Currently the guy I trained under, Dave Camarillo, he works with all sorts of like special operations guys from US and different countries and all different branches and stuff. So it kind of just all like snowballed, and, you know, going designs back and forth with people and talking to different guys and getting some blades out there in the hands of users and getting feedback. And that was pretty much it. So
it's been fun watching your evolution, because you started with some pretty simple designs that when I got a knife from you to review, you only had a couple, and they were and you have definitely changed directions a couple times over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
In the style of knives that you produce. You went kind of away from the bigger stuff down to the smaller stuff for a long time, and then now just coming back with that new Bowie, kind of coming back into some of the bigger stuff. Yeah,
it's kind of, it goes up and down. It's in life, and you kind of figure out what works for you and what doesn't. A huge thing too is for me was like moving shops. I've moved shops I'll say 3 times, even though it was really 2 times, because the first move was really just a retooling. Like I went from making fixed blades to folders, and I just only was only making folders for a year. And to do that, I had to totally change the shop up. Like I pulled everything out, redid everything, pulled it back in. So it was basically a move. And then I moved again to San Diego for the first time into the shop that you got to see. And I actually moved like 800 feet down the road, same area, just last February, like not this one, but obviously the one before. So a little over a year ago. And every time I move, it's like you get new expenses. First of all, you lose like a couple months of work. So you're trying to like balance that. And having only done this like 6 or so years and moving 3 times is kind of a lot. And then, you know, every time you move, like your expenses, everything changes. Like every time I move, it's like my expenses double, shop rent doubles, like everything doubles. So you kind of have to like change gears and figure out, how am I going to make this work? You know, so like, am I going to do like more not as flashy stuff, or am I going to do like more automated equipment? You know, like which route are you going to go? How are you going to change stuff around in order to kind of still like make money, but make cool stuff? And right now I think I'm kind of in in like the perfect blend of it with the new knives that I'm doing, where I'm doing a lot of like CNC handles and CNC sheath stuff, but hand finishing, hand grinding, and kind of taking like a little bit of the best of both worlds. And that seems to be the best way for now, because it's like I can make really cool knives right now at prices that if I like this knife would have been, you know, a lot more if I was doing the full thing by hand, and a lot less of them kind of deal. So just kind of figuring out like that perfect blend, and just figuring out how to be an adult and all this stuff all at the same time. Started like, you know, basically 21 years old, like haven't really known anything else. So, oh, this guy asked below, what's your favorite steel and why? Damn, it's hot in here. I like CPM 3V because it's a solid steel. It's got fantastic edge retention. It's not stainless, but it rarely rusts, and it's available consistently. There's a lot of cool like exotic steels out there that do better things, but the problem is if you're trying to make like 50 to 100 knives a month, and you have to constantly try to like hunt for steel, it's not a great way to build a like a business off of necessarily. So I've found that CPM 3V is the best for what I need and for the knives that I make. And people seem to like it. So I go back off of user feedback, and I rarely get a request to make a knife from a different steel. So I've kind of just been using 3V for the last couple of years, and people seem to like it.
So you definitely you used to do a lot of, I wouldn't say small batches. You were doing a lot of like, you had books, and you know, you had like, I'm going to do this many knives, and now you seem to do a lot of batch stuff and like your pre-order, you know, routine. But even then I see you pretty much put out, you still do some custom stuff, right? Because like every once in a while you'll throw a folder out, or is
Right.
that typically like old pictures or?
It's a combination. Sometimes it's like old pictures. Like I'm like, oh, let's show some of the older stuff. And then sometimes I do custom stuff. Like I started working on those Vendetta 2s. I ground a couple of them today, and those were like the first ones that I ground in like 3 or 4 years. So it's just kind of like goes. It just depends. Like it all depends on how the business is doing too. Like when the business has a lot of money in the account, I can afford to play around more. You know, like. And then when I'm hungry, like when it's like getting low, and you're like, okay, I got to take a batch like of knives to order, you know, something that I can crank out like pretty fast and get it done. So, I mean, that's like the one difference I'd say, like also between going from like garage maker or part-time to like full-time, and not having a, you know, side job or anything like that, is like, you have to figure out, you have to make it work, and you have to, you can't always just like mess around here, mess around there. Like, spend 3 days making one knife, you know, every day kind of counts. So that's why I've kind of like switched that gears, because, you know, the creative juices, they're still flowing. It's just hard to like take, you know, time to really do creative stuff when, you know, you got to pay the bills and, you know, shop insurance and like 10 different kinds of insurance and all this stuff. So,
well, I think knife making and gun making, I think, has come a long way in the fact that automation has become so affordable.
Oh yeah.
That, you know, people who are pistol smiths, you know, making a custom gun now, or what, you know, the market perceives as a custom gun or a custom knife, if you want to do it all handmade and sell it that way, you're still having to compete against all the guys who are doing it with the water jet cut blanks, and so you can say, well, I have, you know, 40 hours or 60 hours into this blade. You're still competing against everybody who's doing it in 3 or whatever.
Right. And at the end of the day, some consumers want to know that this was fully handmade, but most consumers just want the end product. Less how it's made. And yeah, the handmade thing is pretty crazy, because like I'm super transparent with my process. I show batches of blanks coming in the mail in a box, you know, like, I mean, if anyone thinks they're hand cut, then, you know, it's hard to hand cut the you know, the perfect center out of the handles and all that. Like, I'm very transparent. It says it on my website. Water jet is the first step. You know, they come in a box. I hand cut stuff for years, and it does the same thing. At the end of the day, you get a blank, right? So the price, you know, pricing is going to be better for the customer, and there's going to be more knives if you use technology for where you should, and use handmade where it should be used. You know, like certain things work a little better each way, but And that's why, like, on my description now, I took handmade on the Instagram tag out of it. I took handmade and custom. I just said knife maker. Like, I make knives. And
Yeah.
If you want to know how they get there, watch the stories, because I totally show it. But yeah, no, it's 100%. It's become automation has become a lot cheaper. I think when I first started, I mean, I know they had CNC routers, but the one that I have, that definitely didn't exist when I first started, and not at the price. I mean, you can get a CNC router now for like under $1,000 for like a starter kit, or just like, you know, right around there, $995, whatever. And just like, that's basically what mine was, and just upgraded it over the year, got all the parts, you know, that I wanted, made it a little more rigid, faster, all that. Same with like my laser engraver. You know, laser engravers were $10,000, $25,000 for a fiber laser, and the one I got was like $3,000. You know, to some people listening, but not if it's your. And especially if, you know, I'm charging for a custom engraving for like an image, which I'm sure you've had stuff in. You know how much usually engravings cost elsewhere. I mean, every time I've used a laser shop, it was like $150 minimum charge. Because I'll definitely have times where I'm like, you know, running the router and I cut, and then I got, you know, blades being engraved on the laser, and I'm in the grinding room grinding blades out, and like, it's like I have 2 or 3 employees at this point, but it's really just me still and the dog. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you're cutting it out. I was curious if it was just me or if it was everybody else.
Oh no, man. I can hear myself. You were cutting in and out on my end. I don't know, but let's see. What did you miss?
No, I think everybody got the gist of it. They were trying to let you know. No, man. So let's digress into your style a bit. Who do you think you who do you draw inspiration from? Like, who are the knife makers that kind of got you interested or started your style?
Sure, yeah. So 100% Mick Strider and Bill Coy. Both those guys, like back when I first started this, those were the 2 knife makers. Like, it's kind of, you know, when you first find out about custom knife making, right? You're like, oh, this is a thing. Like, you're like, dude, thousands and thousands of people do this. And I'm to some people now, you know, like, I know that for a fact. Like, some guys will go hard on me and like them be like, oh, at Compliance Edge is better or something on someone else's post. Like, think of us and when we're competing or something. And I'm like, they don't realize yet that it's such a big industry, and there's so many like amazing makers. So they kind of just like, you go hard on that first 2 that you find, you know. And for me, those were definitely Strider and Coy. And I remember because I was like, I went to some knife shop to go get a bench made, and I saw a Strider, and I was like, what is this thing? Like, and the lady's like, oh, that's a Strider. Have you never heard of these? I'm like, nope, no idea. And they're like, she goes, oh, this is like the Honda Civic, and this is a Hummer. And I'm like, oh, really? I thought I just bought there was in the world. What are you talking? Like, like, these things are right here. This is what you want to like aim for. I'm like, oh, cool. How much is it? Let me get quite a few years ago. I'm like, oh, sorry, like, can't do that. So that's kind of like how I first found out. It's kind of shoddy over here. Refill.
Yeah, dude, go get
refill my glass.
Like a mother.
I know. I'm like friggin' hot, dude.
That's why I said I'm gonna sit on my back porch and smoke a cigar. So that.
The time.
No, so like, it's interesting you said that about people who like nerd out on certain makers, because you watch people and so one guy they'll find that first knife maker, like you said, like Strider or whoever, and then that person will buy every variation of every knife that person makes.
Yeah.
And it's cool. I mean, it's good for guys like, you know, who, you know, somebody wants to have every knife you make. I'm kind of quite the opposite. I tend to try to be, especially, you know, for me in guns on the instructor side of things, like I like to have kind of a broader base of knowledge. I like to, you know, have the people the base of knowledge I draw examples from be more than one of one. So it's like if I had found you first and never went anywhere else, how do you actually preach the quality of your favorite knife maker if that's all you've ever ran?
Right.
And so like guys like you or Ben Tendrick up here in Eugene, or, you know, Bill Harsey, or, you know, God, there's so many of them, you know, RMJ and Ryan, all those guys, dude, you guys all make fantastic stuff.
It was also a huge inspiration. I found him pretty early on, and he was like, yeah, his stuff he's one of my favorite makers for sure. I love his like kind of traditional Tonto blades and stuff like that. So that was, you know, to add to your earlier question of kind of who inspired me after I'd found kind of Coy and Strider. Ben was one of the first knife makers that I saw other than them when I realized like, holy shit, there's a ton of, you know, different options out there. And this is something that I'd like to try myself pretty much, you know? So,
his more traditional blades and yours actually share a lot of the same qualities. His more Asian styled influences stuff you don't wrap and that kind of stuff. But
right. I mean, I've done a couple paracord wraps, but for me, like, I just never really started doing it early on. So for me to try to learn it, it's kind of I become new again at it. It's like switching from jiu-jitsu to kickboxing, right? Like if you're good at jiu-jitsu and then you go back to kickboxing and you suck again, you're kind of like, oh, I'm used to being good. I'm not even going to mess with this, right? So it's like kind of the thing. And then at the same time, I also I like everything to be mechanical. The way that I make my knives, like when I sharpen them, there's no handle. Like I take the handles off. You might have seen it. I have some sharpening videos, but I basically place like the flat blade on a flat platen that's exactly 25 degrees to my grinder, and I can just drag it across. So if I have a wrap on that and it comes back for resharpening, the only way for me to like get it perfect again would be to unwrap it, all that. So I found it easier to do mechanical handles for that reason. And that's why I've never really done like pins or wraps or anything like that. It's just so for me I want to be able to fully disassemble the knife, clean it, repair it, make it new again, and then put it back together. And it also just kind of speeds up the process. But I definitely see, like, I've drawn a lot of similarities, I think, with Ben. His designs are really just simple and functional, and he doesn't, like, try to blow you away with some crazy shapes and patterns. He tries to just he just does a simple knife really well with high attention to detail. And I think that's kind of what I strive to do myself, is like, let's give a simple design and let's make it to the best of my ability, but not go like too overboard, right? Like, I mean, as we all know, there's like, you could go as high end as you want with like crazy materials and like insane mirror polishes and make like $5,000 knives, and just, you can get super crazy with knife making. Like there's a whole spectrum of it. And I just want to make something, like, I like to just make a workable tool that people could, at a reasonable price. Like, I know people look at them and they're like, oh my God, like $300, but it's you could afford it if you wanted to, no matter, like, you know, if you pick up a little bit, you'll be able to get one.
You come down to the decision of people who, you know, can you own, I mean, you're talking to a guy who has custom 1911s or anything else. You know?
Yeah.
Do you want one really nice one, or do you want 15 ones that work, kind of? Now, I mean, knife's a knife. Yes, you can make an argument that a buck or a buck or anything else will still cut, but I mean, go overseas carrying a fixed blade, that's a tool. You want a nice tool for the job. Like, that's why you don't see mechanics working with cheap tools. It'll still turn the wrench or it'll still turn the nut, but it might not last as long doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Generally, I mean, with the production knives, it's like, and I know now, especially after having done some production myself, it's like, you find out why they're not like overbuilding their knives. You know, why they're like, the custom world's like, it's like 3/16 would be like, for a beefy knife would be like the standard, right? Like you get these thick, expensive, like nice, you know, high-end steel custom knives. And compared to like a production company where it's not that they can't make that, right? It's just that like for them to make 1,000 at a time, the difference in a cheaper, thinner steel is going to be, could be in the millions of dollars, like for a giant production run. So it's just, for them, it's just cost. And I mean, I see it now, like, I think overall, on average, the price of my knives have actually come down over the years. All the newer stuff I'm putting out, like all the Woodsman and the Henchman, those are all $265, right? So that's like $60 more than the V3, which is a production blade. And the Bowie it's $395, which is still the same as like the DCK and DCKR. But it's also a giant knife with like, 3/16" Steel. So it's way bigger than the DCK series blade. Same price, but just still like, if I wasn't using some CNC on it, it would be like, if I was making it fully by hand, it would be like $600 knife. And I think once you see one of them in person, you'd understand too. Like it's one of the only knives I think I've ever made that looks smaller on the photos. Like most people will go like see the Vendettas and the V3s. They'll get it and they'll go, oh, it looks smaller or it looks bigger in the picture. I got it. It's a little smaller, but I like it. It's a perfect size. And then with the Bowie, it's the first one where you look at the picture and you go like, oh, okay, like it looks kind of big, but when you get it in your hand, you're like, oh yeah, I feel like Mike Myers right now. Like this is a big knife. So
I have to say this from the knife that I saw even years ago and the stuff that I've seen since. The thing that I think sets you apart, even just in pictures I'm not saying there's a lot of high-end knife makers, but your attention to detail is it's the little things that really do. Even my dog.
Yeah.
It's the little things that stick out when you compare them side by side.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like, I feel like for me, I always think of it as like necessity breeds innovation, in the sense where it's like, I have to be good at this. Like I have to do a good job because this is the only thing I have. I'm fully invested in this. Like I've never had a normal job. I've never done anything else. If I put out shitty work and it gets around that I do shitty work, then it's not going to work out. Like I have to do as good of a job as I can. And just the fact that from the get-go, I pretty much got to become full-time. It just meant that I had a lot of time to do this. So, I mean, I'll have guys hit me up like, oh, how do you get good at grinding? I'm starting to make knives and it's really difficult. And how do you do it? And I'm like, I always ask like, how many knives have you made? And they're like, I feel like I'm on 6 knives right now. And I'm like, cool, man. Just keep doing it. And when you get to 200 knives, if you have the same question, if you're still having trouble, hit me up. So it's just a matter of, it's just experience. Obviously my first knives weren't that good. And to be honest too, like I've always created just unique equipment. I feel like in the knife making world, there's like this huge, like the guys who like no jig grinding, they go real hard on the like a free grind, like hashtag freehand grind, like freehand ground in the USA. And you're like, I get it. Like that's a talent that I don't have personally. I'm not a freehand grinder. I use jigs, right? Nothing fancy. I bolt it to a block of metal, a 1, 2, 3 block. It's like a $20. It's a machinist block. You buy them off Amazon, and you can kind of grind an angle into them or put some screws in them and make an angle. And it's like, yeah, man, I don't freehand grind, but at least they're both pretty nice. Like it's worth it. So I think it's kind of like putting the whole like competition and ego thing aside. Like, oh, I'm the best fully handmade knife maker and I'm the best this. And I'm like, dude, I personally just want to make a good knife. I don't really care how it's made. I'm going to make it the best way that I can, given the tools that I have. If I had a CNC mill, I'd be CNC machining a bunch of blades and probably have, be running production on one side while I grind, the more custom side. At the end of the day, it's kind of like not how it's made, but what it is kind of deal.
Well, and it's who you want to be, who you want your clientele to be.
Exactly. And that's what it's the same thing. It kind of goes hand in hand too. Like, I found that also the pressure, right? Like if you want to go super custom high end, like as nice as you could possibly build it, and you're going to charge those prices for some of those like, really nice custom folders that you've seen, it has to work really well. And to do that, it takes a lot of attention to detail. and a lot more brain power and stuff when building it. And I kind of want to like, I can do folders. I've done a ton of folders, and the ones, you know, the ones I'm doing now are pretty nice. Functionally, they check all the boxes for like, you know, centered, no lock rock, no lock slip, all, you know, they check all the boxes, but the time invested in it is just so much that like you have to charge a premium to get that. And if you're going to make really, really high end stuff, you have to, you know, it's like more pressure because your customer's expecting it to be something like a lightsaber, like never dull, never this, never that. You know, I paid thousands of dollars for this. And so I found like, for me, that sweet spot of like between 200 to 400 bucks, it's easier to give them what they want at that like $200 to $400 range. They know they're going to get, can't just buy off. But they know they're not buying like the greatest knife the world has ever seen, which anyone that says they're making the greatest knives in the world is full of shit. Like,
I think that's the second somebody uses that line, I just like almost dismiss them. Like, oh, this is I'm the greatest combat pistol, the greatest knife, the greatest kick rocks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I shoot myself in the foot all the time because I'm like a realist. And so like when people talk to me about it, they're like, you know, this thing's basically indestructible, right? And I go like, well, anything made by man will fail. That's just the inherent rule. Like laws of physics, you know, we physically can't make anything perfect. So, and then they're like, that's not a good sales point. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's really good. It's better than like what you're used to, and you'll love it. And if you break it, it's guaranteed for life. As long as I'm alive, I'll replace it, I'll return it, whatever. You know, it's all warranted for life. And I've been doing this for a while, and I think I know what I'm doing. And you know, the proof is in the pudding. I have thousands and thousands of knives out there, and you know, in terms of either people just are too lazy to send them back for resharpening, or they're doing it themselves, or they're just not using them. But I mean, rarely do I get stuff back for warranty and resharpening work. Probably like, you know, 10 resharpenings a year, and maybe 1 or 2 repairs on average. So, I mean, that's kind of how I base it off of too. Like if I was getting stuff sent back all the time, I'd be like, all right, maybe I have to rethink my process and rethink my skill set and evaluate from there. But, you know, it seems to be working. Do
you have a count to how many knives you have out there?
I used to. Definitely not. I mean, it's gotta be in there's a few thousand for sure. I know there's at least just on the V3, we've done like 500, I think. Those ones are, you know, CNC machine from Tops. Tops gives me basically the blades and the handles. And so I do those in batches of either 200 or 100. And yeah, so I mean, just in those alone, we're almost at 500. So if you count all the custom stuff that I've done and everything, I mean, it's got to be a few thousand. But I definitely do not keep track of that and don't plan on it. So.
No, it's cool, man. It's been fun. It's been fun definitely watching you evolve for as long as, I mean, I haven't watched you since the beginning, but just since I jumped on, it's been fun. So what is your current adventures? What are you you said you had some knives with you, so let's chat your current stuff.
Yeah, so here, let me
go back in your sauna.
Let me get back over here and see. It's not as hot anymore, so let's see if you can see these.
It was quiet out here when I first got out here, and then everybody on my block decided to be outside, and they came.
All right. Jesus. All right, let's see. So basically, right now, currently, what I'm trying to do is figure out a way to go towards a production company, right? So I don't necessarily want to be like a Benchmade or a Spyderco. Not that there's anything wrong with them. I don't see myself managing like a huge amount of employees. That's scary to me. I don't want to do that. But I'd like to go towards like one day being like a Strider route, like kind of a boutique, like higher end, semi-custom / production company that, you know, has a few employees. So right now, I mean, like these ones, the Woodsman. So the Woodsman and the Henchman, they're basically the same knife. The only difference, it's like, all right, I don't know. The comments are all popping up.
I know. Mine stopped feeding, so I don't even know if anybody's coming.
So basically, the Woodsman and the Henchman, they're like pretty much the same knife. The only difference is blade shape. So this one is a Woodsman, and it's got a drop point blade. The Henchman has kind of a Persian blade shape. So obviously, this one's going to have a bit of a thicker tip, stronger tip than the Henchman is. And so right now, like those two knives, as well as the Bowie, for all of those, I'm doing the handles fully on the CNC router, right? So, and that's hands off. These handles were literally came off the router almost like this. I had to fit them to the blade and then hand sand them and get them all nice and pretty and all that. But in terms of time invested, it's a lot less time, which means I can make more of them. And obviously, like I've said, more reasonable pricing, right? It's under $300. And as far as the blades go on all those, it's also full flat grinds. So even though I'm hand grinding, it makes it way simpler to do because you don't have to like keep like, if you look at, you know, obviously this one was machined, but if you're doing like a beveled grind, you have to keep the nice clean bevels even on each side. It takes a lot more effort, right? The full flat grind is a lot simpler. It just comes all the way up to the top. That's it. And at the same time, it leaves like a nice and big empty spot. So I'm kind of, if you've noticed, I've been doing a lot of like custom engravings on them, and you know, and having that laser makes that super easy, right? Like I don't have to electrochem etch it, like make a all this. I just load your image in, scan it, boom, pop it in the laser, press go, walk away, come back in 10 minutes, it's engraved. So kind of by doing a full flat like that, it also gives like a cool flat area to engrave stuff on. And plus with the full flat grind, it does cut really well. Probably the best for like actual cutting. And the way I've been kind of grinding them, this one it's hard to tell, but you do leave quite a bit of meat behind the tip. I'm actually going to be switching these 360, kind of scaling them up in thickness a little bit for the next batch of them. Then the sheaths, this one's custom, but I posted it today, and I basically found a way to I'm doing like a vacuum form Kydex. So like a sheath like this, for instance, basically took me like 30 to 45 minutes to make from start to finish. And the new sheath system that I'm doing, which is for these that if you've seen the Bowies, you know, that two-piece kind of pan style sheath, to do one of those start to finish, it's 8 minutes. So
the thing is, I've seen those sheaths versus the ones that are the pancake style. I like the options that the pancake style gives you of being able to mount clips ambidextrous.
Yep. So the pancake style, you know, it's a little wider overall, which like some people get turned off by that. But to be honest, when I first started these V3 sheaths, I was suspect of like if I was gonna like them, right? So I was like, oh, it's wider, it's bigger, whatever. And then once I put it even IWB, I didn't notice any difference. Like your nerves down there, like on your hip, you don't feel the 1/4 inch more of material, and you get way more mounting options. And then at the same time, like I said, like custom sheath for the knife was like 35 minutes start to finish, grinding, cutting, drilling, only so many mounting holes, you know, no slots or anything like that. And then the new style of sheath for these, which you've seen, you know, on the Bowies and like this on the V3, it's taken me about like 8 to 10 minutes per sheath. So a third of the time. So now kind of the way that I'm doing it is like for the Bowies or for these Woodsmen or the Henchmen, what I can do is I can grind like 50 knives, right? And try to get that done in 1 week per se. Like heat treat, grind, get the blade fully finished. As you can see, the handles, it's all exposed hang, which I really like that because you're not grinding it. You don't have to grind the handle to it. So making it is easier. And then in terms of how it feels, I personally really like how it feels because you index on the blade. So between your pointer finger and your thumb, you feel exactly like the center line of the blade when you're using it. It gives you like a unique feel to it, kind of. And then it also looks cool too. Like you get.
It almost acts as like another groove, right? Like so, you're already putting grooves in the handle.
Like if you look at it from here, like it's a groove to it. So it gives you grip. It gives you a little. It just there's no disadvantage to it in my eyes. It's only advantageous. So it's faster to build. And so, like I said, like I can just grind like 50 blades, heat treat them, have them done, you know, round the edges. And then if I want to do a pre-order on these 50 knives, as your orders come in, I just start putting the handle material in the router, right? Pop it off and just pop them on the knife. The blade's already done. And then just put the same with the sheaths, right? Take the sheath color that everyone orders, make a bunch of sheaths, 8 minutes to 10 minutes a piece. And so from there, it's like you can just build out the knives way faster. And that's, and make them in bigger quantities. And for me, that's the route that I'm currently going. And then the next step would just be CNC machining the blades, which like for the V3, the blades are fully CNC machined. If you've seen the original Vendetta knife, or if you look at the one that I posted today, the Vendetta 2, that's a hand ground version of it. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing, right? Like, so as long as it's clean CNC work, it looks good, no problem with it. Function's still the same steel. And that would be, these currently I have machined by Tops. They've been doing all the blades and the handles for me, and I basically just get the blades and handles, and I kind of like just clean them up a little bit, send them out for heat treating, and then finish them from there. But the next step would be for me to get a CNC mill in my own shop that I could run the metal on, because the CNC router that I use is, I could potentially use it for metal, but it's not meant for that. It's better to just do like handles and sheaths in it, and kind of, go from there. And it's a lot cheaper in terms of learning how to actually machine stuff on that, rather than like, the cheapest CNC mill you're going to get is $10,000. And that's going to be something that I'd grow out of in like a year. So yeah, better to use figure out what I have and get really good at it before kind of taking the next step and scaling up.
I was watching Dauntless. Dauntless did that for all the Matt Helm knives and for some of Ben's designs. And holy crap, all of a sudden I got like 76. It's not feeding me the comments or the likes. And then all of a sudden it gives me like,
yeah.
But so Dauntless does a really good job of doing that. I mean, yours do too, but I'm just saying that's what they do. And so you can see how clean a knife can get.
I've actually talked to them about having some stuff done before. Yeah, and kind of like did it. For me, the main thing was like pricing wise, and because their work is second to none, obviously. And Tops just does it at what I felt like Tops does it at a price that I was already used to. We'll put it that way. And so for me, it would have been harder to go that route. But the thing with Tops is, it's kind of like that flow chart of like good work, long wait, price, all that. Like they do really good work at a lower price, but the wait time is really long, which is why people are always like, oh, you can't believe you're going to take 8 more months to make another batch of V3s. And I'm like, dude, they're good and they're really affordable. And because of that, it takes a long time to get them made. And hey, it is what it is. So. Well, I mean, they take so long too. And
you have to be very naive to not realize how marketing works, and creating a limited availability creates want. And if you want something, then you're going to wait.
Right. And it's not that I try to even do that. It's just that
I know.
It's just that doing the production knife, it's like, my minimum order on these is 100. So I have to drop a lot of money, and everyone gets paid pretty much before the knives get paid for, right? Like I've done it in the past where I said, oh, the pre-order starts today and they're going to take 6 months. And that works. But then you get a lot of cancellations and a lot of people like 2 months in, like, is it really going to take, 6 months? And you just get, you start getting those emails. And so I found that it's better for me to get them to the point where they're ready for finishing and then sell them. And to do that, I have to put all that money in myself to get the production run started. And as a smaller one-man shop, especially living in California, especially in San Diego, you know how much it costs to live over here and just how much it costs to operate. And so it's like, I can't put all my eggs can only go in so many baskets. So it's like when I do a production run, I can't do as much custom stuff because I might not have the funding for it. And luckily recently, I was able to get some loans and stuff. Like I got the SBA coronavirus one, so I immediately put in another production order. Kind of, that's what it's for, stimulate the economy. And so I'm like, using that to kind of projects jump started, and hopefully just try to scale up. But you know, at the end of the day, I'm still a one-man shop, and that's kind of the way that I want to stay for a while. I don't want the pressure mainly of having an employee whom like their life is based off of the income I pay them. So yeah, that's not something I'm really comfortable with yet. And I'm sure I'll get comfortable with that maybe as I get a little older or something. But in the meantime, like I've just been going so hard for 6 years. Like I haven't really taken many like real vacations or anything. You know, I just going hard, like just trying to build this business and this brand. And it's kind of just now getting to the point, like with all these newer models, that I can finally actually start to like feel a little bit of success in terms of like, you know, from the business aspect of it. Not from the knife making aspect. From the knife making aspect, I've felt like really proud of what I've made for a long time. It's just more like the fact of now, like instead of being like, oh yeah, I can make, you know, 20 knives a month or whatever. Now I'm going like, dude, if I really push myself, I could probably make 50 to 80 a month that's all I did. Like if I was walked in the front door of the shop every morning, made knives, stayed off the phone, you know, like I could make that many knives now. So it's kind of just like figuring out the balance of what crazy, I don't know what's happening over here, but a lot of crazy noises. But so
what's your ideal number of models then for being a one-man shop? Like, you know how some people stretch themselves so thin,
yep,
trying to make all of the designs.
Yeah. So to be honest, what I want to make right now is the new stuff, right? So I want to make the Bowies, I want to make these Woodsmen and the Henchmen. And in terms of what categories they cover, they pretty much cover all categories. So like the DCK and the DCKR series, like those are great knives and people really like them, but they're still mainly custom, a lot of grinding, custom sheaths, custom handles. They take a lot more time to make. So that's why I'm not putting out as many spots for those. Like if I could only sell these in the Bowies right now, I mean, from a business standpoint, that's all I would do. I would just be like, the other ones are off the menu. Sorry. But I'm still going to be making everything. It's just, it's not going to be as available as it once was. You know, not as many, like when I do a pre-order, for instance, there won't be as many overall spots. I only want to take as many orders as I can kind of actually fulfill within like 1 to 2 months.
Like a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah. And so, I mean, what I found is like just those 3 models, I mean, that's the easiest. But I'm actually on the DCK and DCKR. I am going to be making some changes to them after the next couple batches. I'm going to try to give everyone a chance to order them that wants one exactly as they are now. But I'm going to be switching them to a CNC router style handle with like, it's actually, I don't know if you remember when I first made them, but I had that kind of like ladder grooved pattern on them. Where it's like a grinding wheel pattern. So I'm going to be doing that eventually for those ones with the exposed tang style handle. And then for the sheaths, I'm building like those centerline ambidextrous sheaths that click in either way. See like blade doing that. So I'm designing a way right now to vacuum form and manufacture those style sheaths for the DCK and DCKR. So the handles and the sheaths will be done on those same way that all the new stuff is. And then all I'll be doing is just the double edge grinding the blade, which obviously is a little more complicated than something like this. But it's still a lot less work. So I'll be able to make those, more of those and kind of like have them available more often. And that's going to be happening in like the next 2 to 3 months. I've got my designer kind of working on it with me, the guy that does all my CAD work. So,
what knife of yours do you carry the most?
Probably the folder. To be honest, I don't carry that many knives that often just because it's like my life. Monday through Friday is like I wake up, you know, before Corona it was like wake up, go to the gym, come home, eat, go to the shop, and from the shop, jiu-jitsu, back to the shop, get the dogs, come home. So it was like if I'm outside of my element, right, like my home or my shop, I'm like I have. It's only like I'm in the car, right? So I didn't really have that time. So it's like I had a folder in the car, but in terms of like in my pocket, I mean, honestly, mostly I'm wearing gym shorts most of the day, just going to and from, you know, gym and training and all that. And then right now, I mean, like, we weren't, for the last few months, wasn't going out at all. So it's like, literally just keep it in the car. But I mean, this is my personal folder. It's like the most simple one. It's honestly, it's really the only knife of mine that I own besides a few V3s. So that's what I carry. And, yeah, but in terms of, like, you know, safety and defense, I mean, honestly, I have my dogs with me most of the time. Those are like my first line of defense is the dogs. That's why they're there. So, but, and then, you know, but I unfortunately don't get to carry any guns or anything fun like that, but definitely just, you know.
That's the reason I left California.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm like, if I didn't love my shop so much, man, I would be, I'd be figuring something else out, but.
Well, I mean, dude, I mean, you know, I live right down the street from you, but it's like, San Diego's gorgeous. That, you know, especially when you're young. I mean, or younger, I guess. I guess we're not technically. I guess.
I left my whiskey glass over there, so I'm gonna move again. But
no, I just wanted to give you a chance to show all your blades off.
Sure, yeah. I'm getting hot again too, man. That kitchen is like on fire right now. I don't know why. Yeah. I mean, it's a fun place.
So, do you do any actual knife combatives? Do you do any Krav Maga? Do you do any? So,
at the moment, I'm not doing. I mean, okay, at the moment, I'm not doing anything. Obviously, like all the gyms and stuff are closed. But in the past, I've done some stuff. I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any means, but I have done Krav, and when I started doing Krav, I did it for a couple months, and I was already like a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, so I had a lot of, like, you know, jiu-jitsu isn't necessarily fighting, right? Jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. Like, it's not I don't want anyone to think that I'm like trying to like say Brazilian jiu-jitsu is combatives, because it isn't. But like knowing Brazilian jiu-jitsu helps you out with combatives, because when you know when you're comfortable controlling someone, when you bring in tools like a knife or a gun or anything like that, it gets a lot smoother. So when I did Krav, we did knife stuff, but it was like, it felt not like, it just felt corny, right? Like this, like they were teaching like soccer moms to take away like guns and knives and like making them feel confident with it, where I'm like, I was like, I'm going to get cut. Like, you're going to get cut with it. So that was like, I tried that. And then the combative system that I did with Dave Camarillo, there was some blade work to it, but we used like a shock knife and stuff. But it was less of like pure like knife fighting technique, right? Like in the Krav, there was like a lot of showing you disarms and stuff like that. And this was more like, hey, you guys have a basis of grappling, like go for it kind of deal, and learn by doing. So it was like, oh, you figure out, like, at first you think like, I'm going to try to, like, you see these, you know, grab the wrist and this, and you figure out what works, and you're like, oh, that doesn't really, it's not clicking, like we're still getting cut every time. And then we were just like, you'd start to kind of figure it out a little more, like timing wise and what works and what doesn't, like, and they have like the saying of like, you pay the toll with a knife, right? So you pay the toll, and you only want to pay it once. So it's like, you're going to get cut and you pay it once and that's it. And then you move on and you go from there. It's not like you don't go back and forth on the bridge and pay the toll a bunch of times. Like, that's the goal. It's like, if you're going to do it, you commit and you get it away. But I would never claim to be like a knife fighting expert by any means. To be honest, I think knife fighting is probably a lot more rare, you know, than stabbing. Like,
no, and the first thing, so I did all my knife experience is doing a little bit of karambit work, which is much more of a control tool than yes, it is a cutting tool, but
right.
They use it integrated into a grappling technique.
Yeah, correct.
And then doing Kali when I was in the Pacific, and every single person I've ever worked with edged weapons, it's like you just said, which is, if you're going to get in a knife fight, prepare to get cut, because it's happening, whether you want it to or not. Yeah,
so only do it if you have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, you know, oh, hey, we're going to go to blades. Like, no, this is like, you are being forced into this situation. That's the only way you have to defend yourself, and you can't get away from it.
Right. And to be honest, when we would do a lot of this stuff, and also I want to before I piss anyone off for that, is super like into Krav. I'm Israeli, so I have nothing against Krav. In fact, like it was like growing up, it was like my dad would always show me Krav stuff because he's IDF or retired, obviously. But so I have nothing against it. Just after having done like some of the different combative stuff, I felt a little bit like a little like it was. I got rubbed the wrong way with it, at least from where I was learning it. But yeah, like the stuff when we started doing some knife drills and trying to like defend against knives, the situational drills for me, it was a lot of like just improvised weapon stuff, like grabbing a chair, creating distance, whatever, something you can throw. Like that was what seemed to work a lot more than like trying to grab the knife and get the knife out of someone's hands. Like, you know, you get a chair with long legs and you just try to bash them in the head with it or something like that, you know, rather than like doing some crazy disarms and stuff like that. And I mean, realistically, like if I have to ever go against the dogs, hey, no. Elton.
Well, I think knife fighting, like gun fighting, like combat, like any fisticuffs, like one, I think it really depends on the quality of instruction and the type of instruction you get depends on where you go to get it. Like jiu-jitsu, I know damn well enough people who are good at jiu-jitsu that you can go to the same jiu-jitsu gym and a black belt from one gym is not the same as a black belt from another gym.
Not at all.
And so going to a pistol class, like you see techniques that look great in video when they're choreographed and they're like super high speed and whatever. But if you put somebody with a sim gun against somebody who you can actually shoot and you try that technique, you're going to get stuffed 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
And you're going to end up on the ground and you're going to be fighting over a gun instead of doing that high speed drill where you know, 2 to the chest, 1 to the head, back away. Like that's not how it's going to happen.
Right. I mean, yeah, you would know, man. You've been there. So,
so I think knives are one of those things. I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? Like it's why that quick draw and like utilization of it to create distance, or if you are already in a grappling situation and you can get it out, it is another weapon to use. But it's not something you want to show somebody, hey,
right.
I'm using a knife.
Yeah,
like, let's do this.
Right, knives are supposed to be felt, not seen. That's like a saying that you hear a bunch. And yeah, and it's like, I mean, it's just that everything, like there's, you know, like I said, I haven't taken any purely knife fighting courses, right? I make knives that I feel work for what I need and get, you know, feedback from other guys, right? Like for instance, like on these ones, the reason they don't have a sharpening notch is because guys have given me feedback that, oh, knives with sharpening notches, when used in a defensive situation, they get caught on zippers and clothing and stuff like that as it's going in and out.
Ah.
So that's why, like, on any of these, like, pure, like, defensive blades, that's why I've taken all those notches out. So I basically just go off feedback and go from guys that are experts, because I'm not an expert by any means in knife fighting. But that being said, like, in terms of training, it's almost like anything else, right? Like, so you can do your drills where you're pulling the blade out and hitting targets and all that. But if you never do any live sparring, like, you're not going to have any experience with it. Like, so you got to do, it's important, I think, to do both. You want to make sure you're you know, if you're a blade guy that carries a blade and is prepared to use a blade in defense of their life or others, for sure you should be hitting targets on you know, whatever kind of dummy that you're using. But 100%, if you're not going live with people and either using, like, you know, I make the metal trainers, like if you're using metal trainers with some kind of face protection and actually going against people, like live force on force drilling, it's a necessity. Like, you can't do one without the other. You should be doing both.
We're about to get booted for and we have to restart, but dude, great chatting with you.
Yeah.
Great to see you. Haven't talked to you in a while other than, you know, messages online. Thank you for joining me and talking a bit. And dude, check out, if you're on my page and you don't follow him, you should. And if you're on his page, you don't follow me, 100%. You should too. So take care, buddy, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah. Have a good one, man. Peace.